Back to Miller. Oh, my goodness.
Herbert.
Sidearm sling, and it's a touchdown.
Tyrese Maxey.
Oh, good spin move by Filipowski for the news. Give him 9.
All right, welcome back to the Beef Up Front podcast, the second to last weekend of the college football regular season. It's insane how fast it has came and has gone, but it's here, and we still have a bunch of big games to discuss leading up to next week, the season finale. Of course, Ohio State versus Michigan headlining that one, and then we have the conference title game weekend as well. So 2 more weekends of shows, and before we dive, I guess, head in on college basketball, Joe, for that season. But like we said, a lot of big games this week still. Not that many, I think, off the top great games this week, but still a bunch of meaningful games that will go a long way in deciding who ends up going to the playoffs. So, as always, Joe, welcome back, and how are we?
Coyle, I'm fantastic, as always. Thank you for having me on. I saw you tweet it out earlier today, and kind of like how I did earlier in the season. You got to cherish it. We have this week, we have rivalry weekend, then we have, conference title weekend where, we have 10 games. That's always a very bittersweet weekend because it's all high level. Every game means so much, but it's also like shit. Then it's Army, Navy, and then it's bowl season. And before you know it, we're going to be sitting here breaking down the national title game in like a month and a half. Like even at work today, I had to do something, and the certification was for 3 months. So I had to type in the end date, and the end date for 90 days from now was February 13th. And I was like, and I put down 2024. I'm like, that I shouldn't be already typing out 2024 stuff. Like we still have over a month to go, but it is crazy how time flies by. And now, we're down to about 10, really 9 teams that even are alive for the playoff, even less than that I can win a playoff game and the national title. But this is it. Not even the thick of it. We're on the other side of the season. It's crazy.
Yeah, so last night, we're recording this on Wednesday. Last night, the rankings came out. Georgia hops Ohio State and goes to 1 after their big win over Ole Miss. So our top 4 now is Georgia, Ohio State, Michigan, Florida State, followed by Washington at 5, Oregon at 6, Texas at 7, and Alabama at 8. I think Alabama is where you draw the line for teams that could potentially make it. I guess just anything out of that top 8 that kind of sticks out to you, Joe, or not really, just because we still have a lot of these teams to match up against each other most likely.
I think it just more so is proving that head-to-head with Texas and Alabama is still holding a lot of weight with the committee, because it kind of shows right now that if Texas wins out, theoretically they should have a spot, because that would mean, ahead of them, either Ohio State or Michigan would lose. The fact that they would have the conference title would, put them over that. The only thing where I can see, like, it'd be interesting if Georgia were to lose to Bama.
Yeah.
Then how does that head-to-head factor in? And if that does factor in, well, then, Texas beat Bama, who beat Georgia. So does that mean Georgia will all of a sudden be left out? And you see, the Big Ten, the Ohio State, Michigan winner, Texas, potentially Florida State, Washington, or what happens if you have 3 undefeateds and then you're coming down to that 4th spot where, I know Texas won head-to-head, but Bama beat the number 1 team in the land. It's just there's a lot of moving parts. It's still very fascinating that win holds, still so much weight. But outside of that, in the top 8, Coyle, like you said, Ohio State, Michigan are going to play next week. Going to be one of the most watched regular season games of all time. It might end up being the most watched of all time. Washington and Oregon are probably going to play again. We're going to talk about Washington later in the show. But as of right now, they would have to play again. Obviously, like I just said, Georgia, Bama would, or not would, they are going to be playing in the SEC title game in a couple of weeks. So, and, obviously they're outside of the top 8, but Louisville with 1 loss has to play Florida State. So that's another, game where you're going to have everything work itself out, as we're coming down these next couple of weeks.
Yeah, I think the committee wants Georgia to wind up beating Alabama. I think that'll make their life a whole lot more easy because I feel like it's still going to be a hard hard to keep out Georgia just because of I don't know if they'll take into account, how good that they've been the past 2 years and still for a majority of this season. But they're like we said last week, I think there's going to be one team on the outside looking in that's really going to have a reason to pick a bone with the committee. But as always, it plays itself out on the field 9 times out of 10. So we'll get into this week 12, and usually we do our top 5 games for our ranked teams usually, and then we throw in one of the group of 5 games. Last week we just did 6 ranked because of how good the games were last week. This week, Joe, we actually start in the FCS, at the FCS level. I believe it was this week last year that we actually did the Division III game between Ithaca and Cortland. So this year, we will be connecting in person for the Harvard-Yale game up at Yale. 8-1 Harvard versus Yale, who's 6-3. Ivy League, basically championship game. 12 o'clock kick on ESPNU. Harvard has already clinched a share, at least, of the Ivy League title this year. Yale, with a win, will clinch their own share. Harvard, with a win here, they win it outright. So basically, the Super Bowl for the FCS, because Ivy League does not allow their team to go to the playoffs, I believe, which is another really stupid rule. So the winner of this game will be the Ivy League champion. So it should be actually a cool kind of game to go check out, and should be a lot of energy and passion going on both sides. Yale, on our Massey ratings website, since the official spread's not out yet, they have Yale as a 2.5-point favorite here, over under 58.5. And Joe, is this game played at Yale every single year?
So they switch every year. I think it's, odd numbered years, like 2023, it's at Yale. Even numbered years, it's up at Harvard. But Yale, their stadium is much bigger. Like the Yale Bowl, obviously through renovations, the seating's gotten a little smaller. But at one point, the Yale Bowl sat like 80-something thousand people.
Wow.
It's a massive bowl. Like, when you go, and this game, I love every time it's at Yale, basically, besides I think once or twice I've gone. My aunt works at a radio station down in New Haven. She always used to get, she retired now, but she always used to get free tickets. Trust me, if I had free tickets, I would have given all you guys free tickets. But we used to go every year for free, hang out, have a good time. It's always a great game. The atmosphere around there is great because, the area around Yale Bowl a lot of the time isn't a place you really want to hang out, if I'm being quite honest. But on game day, it's awesome. There's so many people, just walking around. Everyone's happy. Everyone's having a good time. Harvard fans, Yale fans flipping each other off, but it's all in good fun. It's not like an SEC game where you're going to kill each other. It's just kind of like a cool old school rivalry feel. But now to get into the game, I'm going Yale 26, Harvard 17. Yale will clinch a share of the Ivy League title. It is stupid, Coyle, how you said and I don't know why the Ivy League does this. They don't allow their football champion to go to the playoffs. They let every other sport participate in the postseason, but they don't let football. I don't know why. They can say player safety all they want, but it's tough to say player safety when the Ivy League has all 10 of their teams play 10 straight games, no bye weeks, and that's it. So kind of tough, to tell me that you want to do player safety and let that happen, but it's whatever. I'm not going to pretend I know a lot about these teams. I just, when you kind of compare schedules they've had, just how they look against the Ivy League. Princeton was the team that beat Harvard in the Ivy League. Yale beat Princeton in overtime on the road. They also, both played Holy Cross. Harvard played them a little bit better. So I'm taking Yale to cover the spread. I know I have 26-17. I think it's going to be a really good back and forth game. A lot of the games, are always pretty close. Besides, there was a stretch Harvard won like 15 straight games, like as recently as like 2011 or something like that. It was crazy. But besides that, games are always entertaining. Should be a really close game. I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be a beautiful day for kickoff as well. I'm very excited.
Yeah, one of the games I think will actually probably be the dumbest people in the building, I would assume, most likely in this one. So, but this is like you were saying, historically, it's a game like when, as we talk with like rivalries, like we talked about with Oklahoma State, like Oklahoma actually has dominated the rivalry for that fact. But when you look at this is actually one that's going back and forth a lot. Yale 69, 61, and 8. They lead this year. And they lead this series, and they took last year's matchup 19-14. A quick note on this game, though, the Harvard-Yale rivalry dates all the way back to 1875 when Harvard beat Yale in the first game 4-0. So it's just how crazy how far the game has come since then. We're here sitting in 2023. So like you said, Joe, it'd be cool to be another part of history, I guess. But I think it's going to be a low-scoring physical game. I think it's going to be one of those games where both these teams hate each other. Harvard has a chance to win it outright. Yale has a chance to clinch at least a share of the title. So I think it's going to be, for that fact, just a super physical game. I'm going to go with a crazy finish here. I'm going to have Yale blocking Harvard's winning field goal attempt as time expires for Yale to get the win. But I will go with Harvard to cover this one. I'm going to take Yale 21, Harvard 20. So Harvard plus 2.5 and the under of 58.5 hit in there. If we are able to bet on the game, the under is going to be my play. All right, we go to the FBS now. We get some big boy games on the slate. We go to the SEC with number 1 Georgia at number 18 Tennessee, a 3:30 kickoff on CBS. Georgia's a 10.5-point favorite and over/under sitting at 58.5. Can Georgia continue to dominate just like they did against Ole Miss?
Yeah, I think they're going to win this game pretty easily. I know, there's some people talking about, Tennessee gets them at home, kind of nothing to lose. I don't see it happening. I have Georgia winning this game 49-20. I think Georgia is going to cover that 10.5-point spread with ease. I'm going over 58.5. I think that's going to hit pretty, Georgia, I think, could get close to that number on their own. And it just comes down to the end of the day. And all Joe, he's just not consistent. Like, he doesn't put up, he has the greatest arm ever, but when you're not accurate, it shows. They got embarrassed at Missouri. I had them winning that game outright. That was a really tough, I had on one of the side TVs in my friend's house just looking, hoping anything could happen. They look terrible. And just when you look, kind of how I said last week, I thought Missouri was going to lose because they had that gut punch of a loss. Tennessee is now sitting at 7-3. The fan base, as crazy as it sounds, is a little bit nervous about Heupel, which is, I know, crazy because last year they were so good. But the fan base is a little nervous about Heupel. It's such a flat year this year. Mm-hmm. And a real opportunity for Tennessee. If they lose this game, if you include the bowl game, they might be a 5-loss team, which is crazy. I think Georgia's going to win this game pretty easily. I think they're going to go up like 14-0 early and just take the crowd right out of it. If Tennessee gets the ball first, I wouldn't be surprised if they score first, opening drive. I think Georgia, when I was watching the Georgia-Ole Miss game, Coyle, I believe they said like the last 5 opening drives they've let up a score, whether it be a touchdown or a field goal, which is surprising because they've dominated so many games. But and one of those games was Vanderbilt. But I wouldn't be surprised if Tennessee scores first. Maybe it's like a close game in the first quarter. But I think by halftime, you're going to see Tennessee fans starting to file out.
Yeah, no team in college football I think we've seen this year gets up for a big game or a legit opponent like we've seen with Georgia. Mizzou maybe was kind of the only close one, but the Kentucky game dominated, Florida game dominated, Ole Miss after that first drive, like you said, absolutely dominated. They can just seemingly turn it on whenever they feel like it, and I feel like this is one of those spots. And I think that looming game against Bama in the SEC title game is going to be the game of the year. Was a very disappointing showing from Tennessee last week, though, against Mizzou. And it feels like, as you were saying, Joe, with Heupel, feels like the program has kind of taken a step back this year. I feel like they had a super upward trajectory after last season, found a way to beat Alabama. They had kind of all this momentum going. And now it seems like this year they've taken a step back. They've lost every big game that they've played in. Mizzou absolutely took it to them last week. I just think their season is kind of over, and they know it. The stadium's going to be full. It's going to be packed out for a Georgia game, for having the chance to knock them off for the first time in over 2 years. But I just think Georgia knows this team's dead, and I think they're going to be able to go out there and impose their will from the beginning. And they go into Tennessee's house and give them a beatdown in this one. I like Georgia 42, Tennessee 21, so Georgia minus 10.5 and the over 58.5. All right, this definitely makes the list of games that we get every year that it's like, all right, at the beginning of the season, you're telling me that this was one of our top 5 games of the week in week 12. I would have been shocked if you said that, because Arizona was projected to finish 8th in the Pac-12 poll, and here they are sitting with only 3 losses heading into their second to last game of the season. So it's been a great turnaround by them. I'm excited to hear what your thoughts are in this game. Number 22 Utah at number 17 Arizona. But for the love of God, you're playing this game at 2:30 on the Pac-12 network. what are you doing? No one is going to be able to watch this game, and that is the weirdest time too. No game ever gets played at 2:30, but Arizona is a 1-point favorite. Over under sitting at 45.
Yeah, Coyle, this is just the epitome of like how the Pac-12 is going out. You have a top 25 matchup. Yeah, we'll put it on the Pac-12 network. The only person who somehow gets the Pac-12 network, shout out Josh Hassan, he has like some app on his Roku TV. I got there, we were actually watching the Arizona-Colorado game. I'm like, how? I'm like, oh, we must be using StreamAce. Like he goes, no, I get the Pac-12 network. I don't know how on earth he gets it, but good for him because he has a great game, if he wants to watch it. I think Arizona's going to win this game. I think it's going to be an ugly, low-scoring game. I got 17-14. So I'm going Arizona -1. I'm going to take the under here. Love the under in this game. I feel like Utah kind of threw everything they had at Washington. And in a game that was really entertaining but shouldn't have been a touchdown game because that Washington defensive back, I've seen people drop the ball at the goal line or near the goal line. He was at the 2. Like both feet were at the 2-yard line. He wasn't even close. It was insane. But I think that's, it's kind of been the theme of the last couple of weeks with me. Another loss that, you have to go on the road to Washington. You lose a tough game. Now you have to go back, go home, then go down to Arizona to a team that's red hot. And currently, by the way, the third place team in the Pac-12. They are tied for third, but they have the tiebreaker over Oregon State, with the head-to-head win. There's a path where if somehow chaos were to happen, you might see Arizona playing in the Pac-12 title game, which is insane, Coyle. Like you said, at the beginning of the season, no one thought they were going to be any good. Besides the weird, OT loss to Mississippi State in week 2, they've been really good. They have losses to USC on the road in triple overtime, and then they have a loss, I'm forgetting where it is, to Washington at home. 2 very excusable losses in the Pac-12. This is a very good team. I think Jed Fish, honestly, should be at least Pac-12 Coach of the Year. Definitely talked about for National Coach of the Year. Arizona, very good. One of the coolest stories in football that they're not going to talk about. And this is why I wish we had that 12-team playoff, because Arizona would be a team we'd be talking about. Like, oh my God, if things break the right way, they're alive. But shout out the Wildcats. Great season. Hopefully, they can continue this next year in the Big 12.
Yeah, what I was saying at the beginning, where Arizona picked to finish 8th in the Pac-12, and Jed Fish has them in this position to potentially make some noise. If not, they kind of win out here. They're going to get to double-digit wins. That's a massive success. You have to kind of wonder, does somebody else, one of these bigger football programs that has an opening, try to fish him out? I think that was not intended at all. I just realized I said fish him out, but get him away from Arizona to their program. I think that's going to be something to watch. But back to this game, Utah is another team that I've just been on the wrong side of all year. I didn't think that they could hang with Washington last week and put up points with them. Then they went out there and put up 28, I believe it was, in the first half. But unlike Tennessee that I was kind of talking about earlier, I think Utah is more of a program built on pride, and they're not going to roll over despite any of the roster challenges that they've had. The depth and the injury struggles that they face this year. I think they're still a team that's going to get up for this game. And I think Arizona has been on a nice little run, maybe playing a little bit too over their head. This is a Utah spread and just a game where I think it's like how well Arizona's played, how poorly Utah has looked at times, and how disheveled that they've been through injuries. It's one of those games where I think Arizona should maybe be more of like a 3-4 point favorite. I think this one is kind of telling us that Utah is going to find the win this game. So I'm going to take the Utes to go to Arizona and spoil the chance that Arizona could get to 10 wins if they were to win their bowl game as well. So give me Utah outright on the road here, 24-23. So I'll take Utah +1 and then the over a 45 hit. All right, we go to the Big 12 now. Another game where I was looking it up earlier. There was like a million scenarios of who could potentially meet up in the Big 12 title game. So we won't get to all that, but I believe mathematically both of these teams still have a chance. Kansas State, with only 2 losses, much more of a chance than Kansas. But you have number 21 Kansas State at number 25 Kansas, a 7 o'clock kickoff on FS1. K-State's an 8.5 point favorite, over-under sitting at 56.5. Joe, what are your thoughts on this matchup?
I think it's going to be very good. Another great rivalry game. I wish this game was on Fox. I understand the same. You're not talking about it. Texas goes to Iowa State. That makes sense because, Texas is a top, they're number 7 in the country. But Coyle, it's actually shout out Sickos Committee here. They put on their Twitter If every home team were to win this week, there's a very real scenario for an 8-way tie for first place in the Big 12. So, yes, every team from Kansas and up, and that includes Texas Tech and West Virginia, very much alive for the Big 12 title game. There's currently a 4-way tie for second place with Oklahoma State, Oklahoma, Iowa State, and Kansas State. And on ESPN, they have Oklahoma State as like the first team listed. So I guess that would mean they would win the tiebreaker, or however they would do that. I don't know how they would do that in that scenario, but we could be getting Texas, Oklahoma State even after that terrible blowout against UCF. But I'm going to go with the Wildcats here over Kansas 24-17. As much as I want to say the Jayhawks, I just still think, it's Kansas football. They have a new ceiling now, and it's going to be hovering around that, 20 to 40 in terms of like rankings of teams in the country. And I just think Kansas State is way better. I think it's going to be a great crowd at Kansas. It's going to be, really cool that this is a night game. But I think the Wildcats are just going to be too much. I think Kansas, especially with Jason Bean, have just been a little – I don't even know if Jason Bean's playing, if I'm being quite honest with you. But Kansas leaving a lot to be desired. They beat Oklahoma, but then they go and lose to Texas Tech, which is just brutal, especially after the start Texas Tech had of the season. They're 5-5 overall. Just really tough. I was very upset when I saw that, which is weird because I have no, affiliation to Kansas whatsoever, especially their football team. But I think Kansas State's going to win this one. Kind of a team. I believe Kansas State has dominated this rivalry. No, Coyle? Kansas State kind of, especially recently, has owned this rivalry. I think they're just going to continue to do that. Give me the Wildcats. Hope I'm wrong. Would love to see the Jayhawks get a win.
Yeah, last week Kansas was just completely out of sync once Bean went out of the game. They were held to only 13 points. That was their lowest of the season. Other than that game against Texas where they scored 14 points, they've scored 28 or more in every game of the season. Jason Bean, it said, at practice today, did take a lot of the reps, so I expect them to bounce back here if he's able to go out there and play. Kansas State's been playing really well on offense too. Their last 4 games, they've hit the over in. If Bean plays, I expect this to be a really good matchup, kind of going down to the wire in a shootout as well. Maybe one of those old school Big 12 games. There's just too many scenarios, like we said, to break down with whoever's most likely going to be playing Texas at the end of the day in the Big 12 title game. But I can guarantee that Texas does not want to see Kansas State again. I think Kansas State could give them some real trouble second time around. They probably should have won that first game if they would have made that extra point. But Kansas State's still really motivated here and has a chance to make that title game. So I like them to win this one in a rivalry game that's going to go back and forth. But I do think Kansas keeps it close and keeps it within the number. I'm going to go Kansas State 34, Kansas 27. So Kansas plus the 7.5 there, or plus the 8.5, and over a 56.5 hit in there. All right, probably the game of the weekend. We head to the Pac-12 now. Number 5, Washington at number 11, Oregon State. 7:30 kickoff on ABC. Oregon State is a 2-point favorite. Over and under is 63.5. Joe, will the dream season in Corvallis come to fruition?
Yes, I have Oregon State winning this game 25-24. I believe they're going to march down the field, score late, go for 2, win the game. I forget their coach's name off the top of my head, but I loved, when they were playing Utah, his milk the clock. He started just twisting the tits. It was fantastic. Loved the Beavers. Loved what, DJ and crew have been doing out there. And, I remember thinking like, oh, classic Oregon State losing, at Arizona to kind of ruin their season. But as we can see, Arizona is actually a really good team. So there's really no shame in that one. Oregon State, I know they're, 2-loss teams don't make it. But every year, we kind of pick that 1-2-loss team like, hey, if there were to be a team that makes it, why not them? They finish with Washington, Oregon, and then they would have to, in this scenario, most likely play Washington again. And they would definitely be, in terms of resume-wise, probably the best 2-loss team we've seen in terms of, a conference champ, potentially getting a shot at the playoff. I think Corvallis is going to be rocking. This is going to be, it's very rare that ABC or Fox or, CBS chooses them as the Saturday night primetime. Kirk Herbstreit, Chris Fowler are going to be calling the game. I think it's going to be incredible. This is Oregon State's Super Bowl. I think Oregon State wins this game, obviously really close. setting up, putting even more stakes on a potential, Washington-Oregon rematch in the Pac-12 title game.
I don't know if this is their Super Bowl. I mean, I guess their home Super Bowl because last week or next week, Oregon State
Better way to put it. I apologize. You're right because
has
it's
to
their
play
last
Oregon.
Yes.
So that is actually, I think, the way that they would rather go out firmly on top. But I think a lot of people are just on Oregon State in this one, and I think it's obviously due to the home field advantage, but the clash of styles as well. Like at home, I feel like it's more likely that Oregon State's going to be able to play the kind of game that they want, where it's going to slow it down and not let Michael Penix go out there and throw the ball 40, 50 times. Let's keep this one in the 20s and give ourselves a shot because we touched on Oregon State throughout the season. They're more just built like that Big Ten squad. They want to maul you in the run game, shorten the possessions, all that old school football talk, keep Washington off the field. But you still have to find a go out there and stop it. And I think Washington has one of those offenses where guys at halftime or coaches at the halftime press conference or the post game, they're saying that's something that you can't go out there and simulate in practice. The way that Washington can throw the ball around the yard and all the speed they have. I mean, the Huskies still lead the nation with 378 passing yards per game. Washington also, I think, has no room for error in this one, as if they lose this game, I think their shot at the playoffs is pretty much gone. I think Oregon's going to be kind of hanging by a thread if they find a way to beat Washington. They might be that fourth team in or that first team out. I think if Washington loses this game, I don't really think that they have much of a shot to go to the playoff. That's just my personal feeling at the end of the day, because I think it'll most likely be if Florida State goes undefeated, them, the SEC winner, Ohio State, Michigan winner, and then Texas as long as they win out. I think they would get in over the one-loss Washington just because of these teams get punished more for losing later in the season, I think. And those are also, I think, the four biggest brands at the end of the day, too, that could potentially get in. And you're touching really a bunch of different parts of the country there. So if Washington can get up early in this one, I think that's their best chance of winning this game because I don't think Oregon State's a team built to play from behind. So I'm going to go against the public. I've seen a lot of people on Oregon in this one. I'm going to go Washington to go on the road here. 33-28. So Washington +2 and under 63.5. I think Michael Penix goes out there and proves that he's worthy of that Heisman Trophy in this game. All right, our last game of the week, number 7, Texas at Iowa State. Nick McClay's Cyclones, 8 o'clock on Fox. Texas -7.5 over under 47.5, Joe. Will Texas pull a Texas and come out a loser in this game in Ames?
I think, if anything, this would be more of Iowa State pulling an Iowa State because it seems like they always get one of the big boys, whether it be Texas, Oklahoma. The 2 years Oklahoma State had, I believe it was 2011 when we had LSU play Bama. Oklahoma State was number 3. They were 12-1. Their only loss was at Iowa State, the second to last game of the season. Iowa State always plays a night game close against one of the big boys in the Big 12. I'm going Texas here just because if I'm picking Oregon State, this is my stupid brain. If I'm picking Oregon State, I don't think both Oregon State and Iowa State are going to win. So I think, if Washington wins, I think Iowa State's going to win. Very dumb brain, very stupid. It never works. But I'm going Texas here. I'm actually going to take Texas to cover the spread in the picks. I'm going to stay away from that line in real life. I'm going to go Texas 31, Iowa State 23. On paper, Texas is the better team. That's really all I can say about this game. But Iowa State this late in the season, especially an Iowa State team that, we were just talking about how crazy the Big 12 is, currently tied for second place. This could potentially be, we could see these two teams rematch in a few weeks down in Dallas, as crazy as that is. But I think Texas gets it done. I just think at the end of the day, I'm going to go with Quinn Ewers. I'm going to go with, all the guys down there. I'm going to go with Xavier Worthy. They're the more talented team, and on paper, the talent should be enough to beat Iowa State. This is an Iowa State team that, I know they're second place. They lost to the Ohio Bobcats. It's still crazy to me that they have that loss on their schedule, but then they also have wins over Oklahoma State. They beat TCU. They won at Baylor and at Cincinnati. They smoked BYU, who was my dog of the day. I thought BYU was going to put up a fight at least. That game wasn't close from the jump. Yeah. It was crazy. I think Iowa State is live in this game. If you were to take even like a dog of the day, maybe take Iowa State. I love Iowa State spread if I were to pick. I'm going to stay away from it though. But give me Texas and the over, even though I really hate 7.5.
Yeah, this is one of those things where it's like if you're gonna kind of make it known in this sports media industry, you gotta go out there and make some bold takes, some hot takes, and kind of get your name out there. So I actually have a little bit of a feeling that the Cyclones are going to pull it off in this one. If Texas has taught us anything, it's that it's not going to come easy with them. That 3-point win over TCU after giving up 21 points in the fourth quarter last week, they tried to lose that game. The roller coaster ride of that Kansas State game where they should have lost that one if the kicker would have made the extra point for Kansas State. The loss earlier in the year to Oklahoma, to an Oklahoma team that has really faded over the second half of the season. I mean, it's just not going to be easy with this Texas team as long as Steve Sarkisian's the head coach. I'll live and die with that he's not a good head football coach. And I think this is a good game to live bet on as well, to keep an eye on. Like if Texas gets up, 13-0 early, maybe look at Iowa State's spread there. I think Iowa State's going to kind of chip away at that, and Texas has shown the propensity to really fall apart in these games. They might not lose it outright, but they're going to blow that lead at some point, and there's money to be made there, I think, on Iowa State Live. So keep an eye out on that, but this is the Super Bowl for the Cyclones. Their chance to take down Texas, knock them from the playoff, piss on their graves before they leave for the SEC. Iowa State can muck it up. They can make things ugly. They can force some turnovers. They can run the ball. I think they're just going to find a way to take Texas out of their rhythm. And I think we're waiting for that one big upset, that one big domino to fall for that playoff picture to get a little bit more clear. And Iowa State does it here, knocking Texas off and eliminating the Big 12 from the playoff. Will be a huge upset, maybe the biggest, most meaningful upset of the year. And just gut feeling here, I think Iowa State's going to find a way to cause some chaos. With this number only being 7.5, that's a pretty weird number to me. So I'm going to go Iowa State 27, Texas 26, Iowa State plus 7.5, and the over of 47.5, and some chaos there, and Texas just pulling another Texas. So give me the Cyclones to win that one. All right, finish off with our lock of the week and our dog of the day. Joe, you want to give us your lock of the week after having your great lock of the week last week in Florida Atlantic, losing outright to East Carolina. What was going through your head there?
Coyle, that was one of those games, it started I don't know if I said it on the show, but I know I told you. Of course, the first Saturday I ever had to work since starting this job, I had to work, and I'm leaving work. It was about 4:30. I don't even know what time the game started, but I just remember looking at my phone and being like, "Oh, Florida Atlantic's down 10-0. That's cool." And then I kept looking, and it would get it to within 3 because I had it on my phone for a little bit. I was watching, but it'd get it to like within 3. Then East Carolina, who was a 1-7 football team, I don't understand it. It was crazy. East Carolina looked like a playoff team. They just suffocated the Owls. It was crazy. It was very frustrating to watch. I actually had my worst gambling day by far, not including the show, but off the show with natural bets. I went 2-9. Brutal day for me. And the lock of the week, that losing really was just the icing on the cake. And then I had a free bet I put on BYU spread late night, and I'm sitting there at my friend's house. All the games are over. I'm like, I got slaughtered. Hopefully BYU can cover. It was 14-0 2 minutes in. I'm like, this stinks. But this is one of those, like, really, I'm going back to the basics. It's one of the squarest bets you could probably have. I'm going LSU minus 30.5 there at home against Georgia State. Yes, Georgia State, not Georgia, Georgia State. In this one, they are it's minus 115 at minus 30.5, and I'm trying to see what time the game starts. Unless I'm losing my mind. Oh, it's an 8:00 game on ESPN2, so you'll be able to watch it. Georgia State, a team we had on the show, one of our G5 games of the week against Marshall, I believe it was. Since starting 6-1, they've lost 3 straight games, and they haven't really been close in either one of them. They're now 6-4. You're on a 3-game skid. You have to go beat LSU's punching bag. This is the week where the SEC, you have Alabama playing Chattanooga this week. Like, it's a joke. The SEC always has this one week. Obviously, you have Georgia, Tennessee, but besides that, just, one of those weeks in the SEC where you're just going to see a bunch of cupcakes get slaughtered. I think LSU can win this game. If LSU wants to, see, like that's the one thing that scares me about a number this high. If LSU wants to, they can win by 50, and I think they will, just because you even have Brian Kelly going on, like the SEC Network morning show or whatever, and explaining why Daniels, is going to should be the Heisman Trophy winner. If he wanted to, they could put up 50 points with ease. I think they can cover 30.5, no problem. I think Janie Daniels is going to have like 300 yards passing by like the half. I think it's going to be a dominant game, and that's why I'm taking LSU, even though I can also see LSU pulling their starters at halftime and winning by 28. So,
yeah, that's a game where I have the over, and I think LSU, like you said, is going to go out there. They have nothing to hold back. They're going to go out there and put up points. But we've also seen Georgia State be a team that can score some points as well. So I do like the over in that one. I believe I got it at 71. All right, now time for our dog of the day, our underdog money line pick. Mine is a small dog, but one with a pretty telling spread. I got the Miami Hurricanes in this one at +1, actually -105 on the money line at home against Louisville. Louisville, number 10 in the nation. This line just doesn't really make much sense with the Miami team that has 4 losses. But Miami watched a lot of that game last week against Florida State. They put up a good fight. They kind of looked like they belonged. And as we talked about Miami, like they have a few games on the schedule where they weren't boneheads. They would maybe be like an 8-win team. I mean, they completely blew that game against Georgia Tech, and then as well as that game against NC State a couple weeks ago where they just looked like they forgot how to play football. I think Miami next year is going to be in position to be like a 9-win team, maybe crank double digits. But this is one of those games that could kind of be like that catapult type thing. And against the Louisville team that struggled against Virginia last week that I don't think is very good. I already bet this one at Miami +1, and I wouldn't be surprised at home if they wound up being maybe like a 1-point favorite at the end of the day. So I'd encourage everyone to go out there and try and get this one right away.
yeah, Coyle, I mean, that's definitely a great pick, and I hope Miami wins just because – and I say it, like I say, oh, Louisville technically is alive for the playoff. Like you, Coyle, I don't think they're going to go to the playoff. But with one loss – if they go into that game against, Florida State, which I think most likely, I know they haven't clinched, but looking at the ACC standings, you have 3 teams at 4-2. If Louisville were to lose, they'd be kind of in that pile. I don't know how the tiebreaker would work, but if Louisville wins this game, they actually clinch a spot in the ACC title game because they play Kentucky to end their season. That's not a conference game. They host Kentucky as well. By the way, look ahead line has Louisville right now at -5.5. That Kentucky +5.5 might be the play because I don't think Louisville is that good. My dog of the day, I'm going to the American Athletic Conference. Actually, a very big game in terms of that conference's standings. Right now, the top 4 teams in that conference are number 24 Tulane, 9-1 overall, 6-0 in conference. Then you have SMU and Tulsa, both 6-0 in conference. 8-2 SMU, 7-3 UTSA. This is 5-1 in conference, 8-2 overall. I believe Memphis's only loss was to Tulane earlier in the year. Yes, they lost by 10 to the Tulane Green Wave. Memphis hosts SMU this week. SMU, not being talked about enough, leaving for the ACC next year. Memphis is one of those programs that's currently sitting in the reincarnated Conference USA. Like, we feel like we are much bigger than this. That's why they left the Conference USA in the first place when the American first came to be like 10 years ago. Hosting SMU, they would love nothing more. Their fans would love nothing more than to send a big fuck you to the ponies of SMU and knock them out of the conference title race, knock them out of potentially getting a New Year's Six spot. Because right now, Tulane's the only team ranked. So if you beat Tulane, you could potentially be in position to get that spot for the New Year's Six. Give me the Tigers at home. They are +285 on the money line, +8.5 on the spread. Spread definitely going to sprinkle the money line as well. Give me the Tigers here. One last ride. I believe it's their senior day as well.
Yeah, I think that's going to be a fun game. That's one I actually have on my sheet where I got the over 66.5. I think that's going to be a shootout. So, all right, well, that'll do it. Our second to last episode of the regular season. And then looking ahead to next week, like we said, we got, off the top of my head, Oregon State will be on the show. Obviously, Ohio State, Michigan. Most likely Auburn, Alabama. I don't really think there's that many games next week that'll have major implications, as a lot of them are already, most of them are settled or will be settled come conference title games. So hope to enjoy some more college football this weekend. As we said, we'll be in the house at that Harvard-Yale game, and then I assume watching games the rest of the day from there. So any last second comments before we head out, Joe?
No, Coyle, kind of just reiterating what I said at the beginning, echoing your Twitter and stuff. Cherish it. We got 2 weeks of regular season college football. Then it's the conference, championship weekend. So really 3 weekends of, quality football before we get to like New Year's Day. So honestly, enjoy it because pretty soon it's going to be just the NFL and we're going to be knee deep in college basketball season, which of course I'm excited for, but still enjoy the college football. If you have time on Saturday, sit down, just watch all the football. A lot of the good games are starting at 3:30 or later. One of the things they don't talk about enough now is when it starts to get dark out at 4:00. It's a very cool feeling to watch a game when it's like bright out. You can see the sun, and you look at TV for 3 hours. You look back outside, it's pitch black, and you don't know what happened. It's great. I can't wait to be sitting on the couch watching these games. Looking forward to this weekend.
All right, well, that will do it for this episode of the Beef Up Front podcast, the college football show. Thank you, everyone, for listening. Please like, subscribe, and we will talk next week.